And hearing this track, I thought it was the same vocalist because Roger's voice here sounds a bit raspier. The song I heard from the Anthem album was a little bit more clean. So to hear him singing these lines, playing those bass lines, I mean, I could go on all day how much that blows my mind. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Low End University. All My Best Friends Are Metalheads is from Less Than Jake's third studio album, Hello Rockview, released in 1998, and New Musical Express, or NME, remarked that the album is quote-unquote a soundtrack to shoving your friends, listening to All My Best Friends Are Metalheads, and wondering how you ever liked pop punk which didn't have a trombone. This reminds me a lot of a comment I got on my last Less Than Jake video. I can't remember the exact wording, I'll put it up here on the screen, but I agree with this guy, and I kind of like this idea that back then the younger generation really embraced brass players for a while there. As a brass player myself, we need to bring that back. It's also the first album to feature trombonist Pete Anna, who joined the band during this album's recording. So really quickly, here's the thing about this track. I've been vocal about the fact that I grew up hearing the Street Skater soundtrack, which was a PlayStation 1 game. That's where I first found Less Than Jake and a few other punk bands, but I didn't know it at the time. But since we've done this channel, I've only gone back and checked out a handful of those, and this was not one of them. But I know I've heard this in a past life, so excited today to kind of rediscover it, see if it sounds familiar, and just give it a critical listen with much older, maybe slightly wiser ears, plus tons of you have been requesting this one. So without further ado, here is All My Best Friends Are Metalheads from Less Than Jake.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager. If you will constantly remind
Victor
yourself
Lundberg's
that some
speech,
of my generation
an open letter to my
judges
teenage
people
son.
by their race,
That's what I have
their
here.
belief, or the color of their skin, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
But you think it's strange that there's a way of how you looked and how you act and how you think. Pretend they're not the same as you. But you think it's strange that there's a way of how
It's a little familiar, that horn line.
How you think and pretend they're not the same as you. Do you know about her strength and convictions, or how she puts on a
Man, the bass is just so peppy. It's leaning into so many of those major thirds. And I mean, you can't get any happier than this. It's a 1-4-5 progression. E, we're kind of here in E major. So 1, 4, 5, 1. Those are the three major chords in a diatonic key. You cannot get any happier than this. And the bass line is kind of leaning into the third on those arpeggios. I mean, you just can't be in a bad mood hearing this stuff. And it's bringing back a nostalgic feel of when I first heard this. It just was so happy. The only thing I think I really recognize so far is maybe that horn tag, but I'm more familiar with the songs from Losing Streak. Sugar in Your Gas Tank was always my favorite Less Than Jake song. It was the only one I had really heard of these two back then. But it kind of has that same trombone where it's acting like a second vocalist. It's not like a background figure. It's right up there with the vocal melody weaving in and out of it. I'll get to that in a second. But what I didn't know was that Roger also sang this song. Because when I did my last Less Than Jake video, The Science of Selling Yourself Short, the music video kicked on. I went, holy shit, he sings? But maybe backup? Lead though? Lead vocals? I really fell in love with his voice. And hearing this track, I thought it was the same vocalist because Roger's voice here sounds a bit raspier. It sounds a bit more aligned with Chris's vocals, which are a bit more, it's got that rough kind of edgy sound to it, where the song I heard from the Anthem album was a little bit more clean. So to hear him singing these lines, playing those bass lines, I mean, I could go on all day how much that blows my mind. Bass players who can sing and play, especially these kinds of lines here, because he's moving. He's not even strumming the same note. It's like going up and down the scales at a pretty damn fast tempo.
There's a way with how you look and how you act and how you think, and pretend they're not the same as you. Do you know about his strength and convictions, or how she puts on a faith in religion? Woo! Did we take the time to really discover how little we know about each other?
5-1.
Keep us from saying anything, can't separate from everything. Yet all this really
Happy.
means is you're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. You're never friend, you want this anyhow.
Listen to the density that blossoms here with that chord. We go into that chorus, it's driving, tons of energy. That sounds like multiple horn tracks layered here, like bigger than just two people. Could be a guitar layer, I don't know, but you can hear this blossoming, this richness of that chord right here. Oh, that's just pleasing to hear. That's so rich. Yeah, we got panned horns. It's just a really kind of epic way to end that chorus. Now go back to about right here because that's the biggest bass gurgle I've ever heard. I talk about the term gurgle a lot. I associate it with punk songs now, going from one note to another, really gradually with a chromatic passing tone kind of approach. But it gives so much energy to these lines. Right here. Next section. I mean, it's just so... Or I guess it would be kind of more like... Kind of what he's doing. I think when you hear passing tones in this way, your ear is not going, oh, that's an out of key note. You know it's going somewhere. And your ear is already kind of preemptively waiting for it to hit the downbeat, point A to point B. So if you're going from low A to octave A, you're kind of ignoring the notes in betweening it. It's more like just an effect. So when you have all these chromatic notes, it's like you can get away with the out-of-key nature of the notes because people's ears are already accustomed and kind of know and can kind of feel where it's going. I just love that. Okay. Did we take the time Let it go. To really discover how little we know about each other? Keep us from saying anything, yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is you're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Love that. You want this anyhow. God. You know what's funny? The horn part being the most memorable, it's just so simple, and these little melody jabs are what, I can't stress enough, it's what gets stuck in my head. I love it. That's like the hook of the song to me. There's a way of how you look and how you act and how you think. Pretend they're not the same as you. And do you know about his strength and conviction? Or how she puts all her faith in religion? Did we take the time to really discover how little we know about each other? Keep us from saying anything, yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is you're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Keep us from saying double chorus. Yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is you're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Another friend you won't miss anyhow. Back to the intro. Got the minor 3 in here now. Okay. Love the horns. Do you know about his strength and conviction? Breaking down here. I still think out of all the bands I've heard so far on the channel getting into the punk thing, there's a lot I've heard with horns that have blown me away. I still think I'm very partial to Less Than Jake's horn stylings. And I don't have a ton in my sample set to compare with. I guess we've done Catch-22, Streetlight Manifesto, Real Big Fish. Suicide Machines had a song with them, Mad Caddies, all excellent. But something about the simplicity of the melodic content in the horns that Less Than Jake uses it's just what sticks with me. I remember the first time I heard Streetlight Manifesto with We Will Fall Together. I was like, that's some world-class horn playing. It's incredible. It's epic. It's intricate. There's so much musicianship and talent behind the horns. Just as good. But I like that this is kind of, I don't know, it's got this simplicity that you just can't ignore. That's what I'm going to remember, just 3-4 notes. They just keep hitting you over the head with that and those little tags. And I also like that Streetlight Manifesto had the horns, but they were a lot of times kind of a secondary layer, just making everything so epic with the way they sound. But I like that you have the single trombone kind of weaving in and out of Roger's vocal lines. It's almost like having two vocalists. And I just like how upfront and important it is in their sound. It's just epic. I just love the way it sounds. A trombone has such a timbre that just can fit in that mid range and not really compete with the vocals in a way. I think a trumpet or a sax might. Trombone seems to have a really specific place in the sonic spectrum that just really works. I'm gonna go back to it right here. Okay, here's where we were. Back to the intro, putting that C sharp in there, the minor third. So simple.
Do you know about his strength and conviction, or how she puts
God, that
all
cross-sticking.
faith in religion? Did you take the time to really discover how little we know about each other? Keep us from saying anything, yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is we're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Keep us from saying anything, yet separate from everything. Yet
Don't recall
all this
this.
really means is you want
That's a very classic cliche. Take the end of the song, chorus, modulate up a whole step. I mean, tons of famous classic songs do this. It's cliche because it's done a lot, but it's done a lot because it's so effective. I mean, this song is already overflowing with energy. How do you give it more energy? You take the last chorus and put it up. You go up a whole step. Do the same thing. Drive it out. It's a foolproof method to add more energy to your song. If you're writing a song, try it. Try it in your last chorus if your songs are structured in such a way. Just listen to how it elevates it.
know about each other. Keep us from saying anything, yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is we're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Keep us from saying anything,
Up to there.
yet separate from everything. Yet all this really means is you're one in a crowd and you're paranoid of every sound. Paranoid of every sound. Paranoid of every sound.
Horns are making that cluster chord there. You hear that? A cluster chord is basically when you have three, I think technically it's three adjacent notes in a chord of a scale. You get that kind of dissonant sound. I think these are three adjacent notes in the scale. Listen to that, the way they kind of cascade here. Yeah. So you get this kind of sound. It's kind of hard to play on bass. Just so rich. And the song structure and composition is really open. 1-4-5. There's not a lot of that rich kind of sound, but they've done it in 2 or 3 places now where they've had the horns blossom out. It gives a lot of depth to the song that's otherwise open, driving, and simple. And it's just tasteful. I don't know if the band or the producer came up with that, but it's just really effective and really grabs my ear. Hear it again. That was a weird way to get back to the original key, but I'll take it. This track embodies that younger 90s kind of less than Jake sound that I remember hearing. And it's so weird that something like this would trigger a nostalgic feeling within me, not having grown up listening to this stuff. But there's one little subset of music I did. It's that Street Skater soundtrack. And it was kind of something that existed in a vacuum, because this is my first time hearing it since 5th or 6th grade. Nothing rang a bell other than that horn line, which is so catchy. I think that goes to, it's a testament to what I was saying. It's those little simplistic melody jabs that really hook you in. And something I wanted to comment on as well, Roger's bass tone. I didn't mention it really in the video, but it's so unique in the way it's EQ'd. I might be overthinking it a bit, but I feel like some of the fundamental pitch in the EQ spectrum, let's say the mid-range, is pulled out just enough to where you don't hear the notes themselves as much as you hear his attack and the fundamental low end of his bass tone. So when he does those kind of gurgly runs I was talking about, it's almost like you don't know exactly where he's at, but you can just hear it moving. And it's a visceral thing that adds energy to this song, just the way it drives. You know, I don't even know how I demonstrate that. It sounds like very neck pickup heavy. But if I pulled the mid-range really high or boosted it, you hear how immediate the note is? But if I pulled all the mid-range out and kind of boosted the treble, it's like that note isn't as immediate. You just kind of hear this. I don't know. There's something magical about the way it fits into the mix. So I just wanted to comment on that. But this is the Less Than Jake sound I love. I feel like the horns were a lot more prominent. I remember when I did The Science of Selling Yourself Short, I kind of went into it reading comments about they kind of phased the horns out a bit or they weren't as prominent. I remember that song was a very vocal-driven song, and the horns kind of crept in at the end. So this is the album I'm going to put on the poll at Patreon. Come join us if you'd like to support the channel further. The patrons over there have been asking for this one. I've seen comments about it. Little did they know it was coming up in my queue. But that's all for today. All my best friends are metalheads. That is a very true statement and an expression I love. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. We just hit 100,000. This is incredibly amazing. Thank you all so much for that. This is not possible without you. I love you all. We'll see you next time.